Get a lot of questions about the basics of airbrushing paints, and I don't go into a lot of detail about paints on the DVDs because paints, paint types, paint technologies, paint companies, paint lines, they change a lot over time, while artistic techniques do not, and the DVDs are basically about artistic techniques, so we don't want to outdate a DVD unnecessarily by getting watered down into discussions about specifics like paints that are going to change rapidly over time. So we'll use this YouTube video, which we can change if need be at some point, to help discuss paints, and especially with beginners, get them snapped into the basics of airbrushing paints. In airbrushing today, there are basically two generally popular types of paint you're going to run into: water-based and urethane. They each have their own advantages and disadvantages, and you got to know when to use which one. We'll get into that real quick here. The water-based paints have no fumes. They're very cheap and easy to clean up and to deal with. They're great for practicing your airbrushing, and they're great for doing indoor work such as murals. In a home or business, if you've got to do a paint job on site, you want to use water-based paints only. The urethane fumes will just kill people. They're very unpleasant. They won't go away, sometimes for days or even weeks. Some people swear forever. It depends on their sense of smell. And you don't want to have that kind of anger from your customers, so only use water-based paints when doing indoor art murals or any work on site like that. Now, the urethane paints hold up much, much better to sunlight than the water-based paints. In particular, the water-based candies, which are basically like disappearing ink in sunlight, no matter what you clear over them with. I tried this about 80 ways to Sunday. Don't try doing a water-based candy paint job on a motorcycle tank or something. They'll come back with just a black and white tank and no color within a few weeks. You definitely want to use urethane paints on any serious outdoor project, especially automotive projects, cars, motorcycles, helmets, etc. And again, especially when you're using candy colors. We'll get into that subject more in a bit. The water-based paints are most common that you're going to run into brand-wise are the Auto Air paints and the Createx brand. Createx promotes itself as and is basically the paint for textiles, such as doing t-shirts and so forth, with Auto Air purporting to be more for automotive use. And again, I strongly recommend using only urethanes for automotive projects. However, the Auto Air does come in candy colors, which will come in handy for practicing doing candy color paint jobs with urethanes without exposing yourself unnecessarily to lots of urethane fumes. I save using the urethanes for when I really need to use the urethanes. All of the practice work I do and so forth, and on the DVDs, as you'll see, is water-based. And so that's an important note. Now let's discuss the difference between opaque, semi-opaque, transparent, and candy color paints. Basically, when you go from opaque to semi-opaque to transparent, those terms describe, as the names clearly imply, the differences between the opacity versus the transparency of the paints, how much they reflect light versus how much they let light pass through them. So with many paint lines, adding a transparent or clear base to each of those colors, opaque, semi-opaque, and transparent, will make them more and more transparent. You can even make most paints, or many paints, almost as transparent as candies by adding the base to them. And when we talk about the transparent base, you will see in the DVDs that that's something you need to mix in with the water-based candies when you're practicing your artwork and your flames and so forth, and your true fire, realistic flames. You need to add in that transparent base to those candies to get them to harden it all. And even then, a lot of times you end up having to clear over each layer in order to get them to not bleed up. Again, the water-based candies are not very good as a serious paint for outdoor or automotive work, but they're superb for practicing your artwork and avoiding those urethane fumes. Candies are in a completely different league of their own. Candy colors do not reflect light at all. They merely refract light. Like ink, they tint. They color or tint by having the light pass through them, strike a light-colored or reflective background behind them, bounce back out through them again to the viewer's eyes. In the process, the candies absorb certain wavelengths of light, depending on the color of the candy, and thus colorize the light. It's a really cool effect. Candies are completely black on a black background. They'll disappear because there's nothing reflecting back up through them. And while they're invisible in that environment, then where those candies go over light colors, then all of a sudden they appear very bright and very backlit. So you get this massively wonderful contrast between very bright and very dark areas. And that's a superb effect, in particular, obviously, for things like creating realistic flames. Okay, now we've talked about AutoAir and Createx brands, and I don't make any money from any of them or anyone else. And you'll see here for my urethanes, I use a brand called Exotic Colors. There are a lot of brands you can use. Again, I don't make any money from them. That's just what I use, and I'm letting you know the name of the brand and so forth. Okay, here's the exotics and the urethane and candy and opaque. You can see the candy colors look funny, and then there's the water-based on the right. There's an opaque orange in Createx, and to the right of that is the candy, which looks black in the jar and the bottle there. There's the opaque orange on the foam board there, and it clearly looks orange because it's reflecting almost 100% light and just changing, absorbing certain wavelengths and reflecting the rest. The candy looks black. It only lets light go through it and absorbs it in the process and changes it. So it looks black until we thin it out, and it's bouncing enough off of the white background through the thinner areas of the paint that we can see what color we're going to get. Hopefully that demonstrates what I'm talking to you about on the difference between candy and so forth. Again, this is the exotic brands, and you can see there's the orange candy. It looks black. Only around the edges at the top there can you see the color, and that's orange. And there's an opaque orange, exotics. And you can clearly see looking at it that it's orange because it's reflecting the paint. So that hopefully will demonstrate the difference between candies and opaque, semi-opaque colors to you. Okay, we'll show you one other demonstration here. It's just basically the same thing. Let me use a purple this time, and I want to express a couple other ideas here to you. There's the candy purple that looks black till you spread it out, and there's two things you want to note here. One is that the thinner it is versus the thicker it is going to make a difference in the shading, how dark it is and how light it is, and also how dark or light the background is going to make a big difference with candies, much more so than with other the semi-opaque or the opaque colors or anything like that. So just want to get those 2 points across. Just basic stuff, general stuff on the candy paints. Now here we have all the paints, water-based on the left, including the water-based clear coat at the back there, that big bottle that you use with the candy colors in the AutoAir water-based to help harden them ish. And then we have the exotic color urethanes on the right. Just give you a little display there. Now, a lot of neat stuff on my website at chuckbauman.com. Information and lots of helpful stuff for doing airbrush art, including the DVDs that I have for sale. Now, these DVDs are very complete, very thorough, very good DVDs. I teach very well, and I don't cut any corners or cut back on any information. The 2-hour-long DVDs, 3 DVD set, 6 hours total of airbrushing is only $29.99 with free shipping worldwide.